For this Planning Economic Development Committee meeting, March 16th, 2021. It is 5:00 p.m. Our first order of business is approval of minutes for our December 15th, 2020 meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Do I hear any changes to the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Just found out that the Clemson University presentation will not, there's no one here to present that today, so we will move along to discussion regarding Bailey Bill overview from Oconee Economic Alliance President, Ms. Annie Caggiano.
Afternoon. Do y'all mind if I remove my mask? I've been in it all day, so. And Katie, if you can pull up the presentation whenever you get a second. So, we've recently met with a developer who's interested in a property in Oconee County who mentioned the Bailey Bill and if we had adopted it. So I thought, in speaking with Mr. Kane, it'd be a good idea just to start to the discussion, because there'll be a lot of steps and process to adopt it if you all are interested in taking it to full council. So I'll do a brief overview and then we can just get into any questions that y'all may have.
I think the batteries are dead.
Okay.
I can hold it over for you. I have to try it more than once. If it doesn't work, I can do it for you.
So the Bailey Bill is a statute that was adopted in about 1992 and has since been updated, but it allows local governments to adopt this statute to really accomplish two things. It allows us to establish a property tax abatement to encourage rehabilitation of both historic properties and or low to moderate income properties. So there's two different tranches that we can take. That also sets in the statute the period of time that we can allow for this abatement to occur. It's over a 20-year period, but it's up to us if we adopt that 20-year period or some distance in between. And it's based upon, we'll lock in a special top property tax assessment based on the property tax's fair market value prior to rehabilitation. There we go. So within the statute, it has both the historic and low to moderate income criteria set within it. So we'll look at historic first, and it means the owner of the property applies for and is granted historic designation by the county's governing body for the purpose of special property tax assessment based on one or more of the following reasons. So the property is listed in the National Register of Historic Places, so that's obviously the easiest and path of least resistance. The property is designated as a historic property by the county governing body based upon criteria established by the county's governing body, or is at least 50 years old, or the property is at least 50 years old and is located in a historic district designated by the county governing body at any location within the county. So you'll see there's a lot of technical aspects to this within the bill that we would adopt, and we'll get into that later about process. So the other path that we can take is the low to moderate income rental properties. So eligibility for the certification in the statute has several different things. The property provides accommodations under the Section 8, or in the case of income producing real property, the expenditures for rehabilitation exceed the appraised value of the property. So say you buy a mill house for 30 grand, you put 60 grand into it. Or if the housing rehabilitation is located in an area designated by the local government as a low to moderate income rehabilitation district. So where the county would come into play is adopting an ordinance, and these are the items that we would discuss and decide what we want to stipulate within our ordinance. So what historic structures qualify? Do low to moderate income rentals qualify? the minimum threshold invested to qualify, so kind of when we do fees, we have that statute, $2.5 million. This would be the same for the amount that we choose. What the qualified rehabilitation expenditures are. Some of the ordinances that we've looked through allowed for engineering costs or architecture costs, so service fees. Some did not. It's purely construction. So those are some of the things that we can look at. Who certifies compliance of the rehabilitation project, and how long the special assessment will be offered. So thinking through what the alternatives are if we didn't adopt this ordinance in the Bailey Bill. For historic commercial, we could enter into a multi-county industrial park and special source revenue credit, just like we did with the Newry developers. For historic residential, we don't have a local equivalent. So the Bailey Bill would allow for these residential properties to be rehabilitated. And then low to moderate income, again, there's no local equivalent, but both with historic and low to moderate, there are national programs that people can apply for. So really this a high level overview of what's in the statute and some of the items that we would need to adopt. But I think, thinking through the process, we kind of just want to gauge your interest in the Bailey Bill and then how staff would work together. Both, I think planning obviously needs to be involved. Mr. Root's office needs to be involved. But then gauge your interest in working with the cities as well. Because having one ordinance with the other cities so that it's an easier process for developers is always key. But open it up to discussion, any questions y'all may have.
I appreciate you bringing this forward and certainly glad to hear someone's interested in utilizing the Bailey Bill in Oconee County. Does anybody have any questions or discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I guess through my research and everything that I've done, trying to figure out how do you rehabilitate these mills, and a lot of them exist within the cities and city areas. So, and all across the U.S. is a problem because the cities were built around these mills and everything like that. And until somebody comes in to do something, there has to be a lot of encouragement for them to put the kind of money it takes to either remove the structure or to rehabilitate the structure. So especially when they're dealing with, if it's a toxic area or something like that. So there's a lot of good programs that I think through the state and on the federal level that have helped on taking these properties and making them livable again. And I think this is just another tool that we as a county can use to encourage these. And we own a building that would qualify for this that has been talked about for years, whether it was to remove it or whether it was to rehabilitate it. So I think to me this would only encourage what we're trying to do. And if you look at the taxes that we're getting off of these facilities right now, or the cities are getting off of these, it's null. And in all honesty, it's a lot of them have issues with it, whether it's crime or whether it's something like that. So I think to me, anything we can do to encourage rehabilitation or housing units around there or rehabilitating older homes, I think we should definitely be in favor of.
I agree with you. I think that any tools we have at our disposal, it doesn't hurt to have that as an option. Even if we don't utilize it immediately, I think getting that into an ordinance form to be able to utilize that in the event that someone does want to use it only helps. Of course, it'd be extra work for Mr. Root and our staff, but I think that if we made it as broad as possible, just to not limit opportunities, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think we've got to do everything we can to encourage people to come in and invest in these old structures. And we have lots of them that probably would qualify. And, there are towns that have been revitalized that were mill towns that you can just look at. And I think this would be just another incentive to do some of that.
Absolutely, and it's very much like a lot of our other incentives. It's stackable with other credits. The only other bill that they can't use is abandoned building. That's the only rule in South Carolina. And it still would have to be approved. It's just like any of our other projects. We want to make sure that it's a project that we want to approve, and that we can look at the tax assessment and see what property taxes are being given up once we establish what the parameters are.
Do we know of any drawbacks if we do adopt this?
Other than the property tax revenue that's given up, that's the only one, but I still think you're getting a lot more than you're giving up.
I think the other thing is if they come in to rehabilitate that specific area, they'll make additional investments around that area as well. So, I mean, because you're talking about auditoriums, you know, Salem, perfect example of that. That would qualify for that. I mean, you got pictures of a mill sitting right here, but, you know, Valhalla, Westminster, Utica Mill, I mean, they all have mills, Avondale area around Walhalla, you know, all of those areas would apply to this. And, you know, some of the buildings have been tore down, which is a good thing, and other ones are sitting, you know, like what we've seen at Utica. So,
And since we don't have a historic governing body, I did meet with Dan, and his last name escapes me, at SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. They would be the approving body for us for the historic piece of this.
No, that's what I was going to ask about was, because I've not talked to History and Archives, but I know that they said they would.
Yes.
They would even do training, you know, as you implement the ordinance. So you talked to me, he said he would still do that. I know bringing them in concert with the cities because at least the last AG opinion I read, and it was only a year ago, so I'm sure it's not changed, was that, you know, cities implement it, it's only going to be specific as to that city aspect of the special assessment. So you want to get it in concert.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these would like to be in the cities, so we want to, you know, team up whatever way we can with the cities and maybe get the archives in front of both of us to talk about the best way to march it through. The ordinance is really easy to draft. It's very simple
Yeah. it's
process. Just getting the right mechanism in place.
Yeah, the process is going to be the biggest thing. So we have to develop our own application, and who processes that application? Are we going to charge a fee? So kind of doing a work study with SHPO, I think, is a great idea, and we can get, you know, Valhalla is very interested in this. Libby and Bonnie and I have talked about it. And Seneca has one adopted, is that?
Yeah, Seneca has one on the books, but as Annie pointed out, in 1990s, it was first put in. It had, you know, not only the special assessment, but assessment ratios built in, and it was a shorter time period. It didn't have as much discretion. That was updated in 2010 or 13, and Seneca's wasn't updated, from what I see online. So again, getting ours to harmonize.
And there's good examples. Richland County and the city of Columbia.
Richland County has a very good one.
Has a really good one. Another, just plain county, or just the county, was Horry County, because they did have projects in the unincorporated area. So we've got great examples that we can utilize, and certainly work with SHPO to make sure we're doing it right.
Sounds good. I think that we should move forward with this. John, did you have any other comments?
No, I'll make a motion that we move forward with writing the ordinance, or doing whatever we need to do to.
You think the first step would be get SHPO in front, maybe coordinate with the municipalities and get whoever from Archives and History to kind of talk us through the process? Is that what you envision?
I think that would be the best next
Yeah.
step.
I'll make a motion that we do that then.
Any discussion?
I got you.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you,
much.
Ms. Caggiano. I don't know that we have anything else, so we don't have any new business, so, next thing we need is a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
All in favor,